All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Repurpose, the podcast. Aaron said, okay, you should record because we're going to figure something out. I love, Aaron, that you can feel now. We're now at this part of our relationship where you can feel something's getting created.
Yeah. Well, whether or not this thing ever, so if you're listening to this, if you're out there listening to it, then something really cool got created. And that's why you're listening. At the very least, we wanted to record it. I wanted to record it because we're going to say stuff that I'm going to forget because I can't remember anything. And
it's perfect.
I'm almost gotten myself to the point where I'm willing to re-listen to these podcasts to find out what I missed. But the thought of listening to myself is still sort of like, no me gusta. All right, but so here was the prompt that got me thinking we weren't, in looking at our next launch of this community, right? The next time we open the community for for others besides the podcast, which is really the intention here, is to expand the community of people playing inside this conversation for legacy, leadership, and leverage. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And we've been wrestling with that for a while. What feels right about it, how to do that. And we've come to, and this was sort of the lesson learned from the first run at having the community was there needs to be a project or a doing of some kind to house the conversation. Mm-hmm. There needs to be some field upon which the participants, people in the community, can play so that it winds up in reality. You can see the results and measure your expansion, have a way of gauging what difference this is making. Yeah. Had we not launched the first community, we wouldn't have gotten this lesson. So, in the first community I'm avoiding saying it was a failure because, it's not in existence now and it didn't go, it's not ChatGPT yet. So, you know what I mean? Sure, it's a failure, but I feel like, we got that because it was a field, because it was a game on the field. It was an action. It showed us the next thing that was missing. So we're now clear that when the community gets relaunched, there needs to be some structure for people in the community to play in reality in a certain game.
Outside of the conversations that happen in the community.
Exactly. Outside the hour and a half that the community represents every week, there needs to be a place to go that's going to get applied. And it's got to be more specific than my business.
Right.
That's going to get applied to my business, but how? And how are you going to measure it? How are you going to see it? Which we, that's, then we begin to grapple with, I'll get into those tantric principles here in a second, because I do think that they apply. But it just chased another thought out of my head. Oh, and then we had, then right before we hit record, the prompt was, okay, and what difference is that project going to make for people, for others? That's, you were quoting Viktor Frankl.
Yep.
Right. And that assertion was what? We might as well say that again.
Yeah. And I don't know, it was a quote, just the idea that being in service of others outside yourself, to give yourself to the service of others. And I use the word in the form of a project for you to create, what am I going to do for others, is what creates meaning. Whereas if you get lost in your journal with yourself and it's only ever about your own ascension, sometimes you can, get lost in your head, in your mind.
Right.
And
that is that orientation that what we do for others is what gives life a fulfilling meaning
Yeah.
is not something that we made up. It's got a huge history. We're, from Viktor Frankl, Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., Werner, anywhere you want to look.
Yeah.
The idea that what gives a human being's life a fulfilling purpose is the work they do for others is probably at the heart of, as a matter of fact, Chris, I just realized, when you ask people, right, most realtors, I would think, and just going to go back to that thought, what the community, who the community speaks to or for is, when people say, what's your life for? The answer, if there is an answer, comes back quite often, my family.
Yeah.
And that's the nature of that no one says, because I want to amass more cars than anybody ever has amassed. No one says, because I want more. No one acknowledges it that way. No one says, because I need more money than anybody else ever had, or whatever. No one says that's the purpose of their life. They just don't. They either say, I don't know, or maybe family, or maybe they do have something worked out regarding their purpose. But it's always an outward facing phenomenon. It's innate to human beings that we are here to make a difference for others. I mean, that's an assertion that I would back with my personal experience and the experience of all those people we just talked about.
Yeah.
So good. So then there's the idea that we have a community of people who believe like we believe. I mean, it's funny, we've organized it from job title, which is, we might want to relook at that it's not so much for realtors as it is for people who believe that they have an opportunity to make a difference with their life, could open it up that way. But in the meantime, for realtors who say they're interested in that kind of a legacy where their life made that kind of a difference for people.
Yeah. And
that this conversation is providing tools and ideas and brainstorming and a community of others to get up underneath that idea. And that that puts us at sort of a crossroads, I think, Chris. Do we direct the project, or is each individual person direct the project? And then what are the parameters of it? What are constitutive elements of that project? What, must it have? And then do we put ourselves in the position of judge? All of that, those questions then arise if we're going to have a community where there's action. What are the guide rails for that action? What do you think?
Yeah, no, that's great. I was just having that conversation this morning with another person just about that a project would need. I'm going to use the word project for what we're talking about here. Would need some scaffolding around it. But I, I'm a path of least resistance guy. So I'm like, what's the vital few things I can scaffold around it so that I don't have to manage it? I don't want to babysit projects. I don't want to be the judge of projects. I just want people to have enough of a framework for how to think about creating a project that they could be off you go. Like, you had enough to create it. Now off you go, and you go figure out what it works and doesn't work, and come back and share what you found. And if other people do that, there's a crowdsourcing of what works and doesn't work about each other's actions in the world.
Good. All right. Well, what's the bare minimum?
Well, I mean, this is where, this might, Aaron, get to the place where those four systems of a cathedral that we talked, the cathedral analogy, and inside of having a true north that you build a cathedral toward for, that like any house has HVAC systems and plumbing systems and things, that there are some systems to building a cathedral in honor of your true north. So the right message, that part of your project would I'm just talking out loud with you here.
Yeah, no, it's good. You got to determine. So let me just before you get to all four. So the right message. So that means you've got to distinguish both your true north, like what is it that your life is for?
Yeah.
Right. Yours is when leaders lead.
Yep.
mine is people have the experience of agency.
Yep.
Right. That's the north that's been distinguished. That's the message.
Yep.
Right. Is that the message? Is that what you're calling
it? It informs the message. So the message will very much sound like things about agency or things about leading. And that might be a place for you to, I mean, I have whole programs that I've taught around how do you start to find your message. So there are ways to begin to nurture and cultivate their message, but
good. And it's not so it's not the message. It could be like, it's the message now, right? There's the true north, and that's not changing.
Yeah.
Right. That's the direction.
Yep.
And then there's underneath it messages. So messages could be said to be, consistent with whatever game you're playing. Like there's a message here. It's true to the true north, but this message is this, right? This message. So I'm just talking this through, and this is so for people listening, this is very much an opportunity for you to start to get clear. Okay, I have an overall purpose in life, that everything I'm building, the cathedral that my life is in service of honoring that message and that communication, that ideal, that future, that world. And then the message is, okay, well, right now the message is, we're in this conversation, this community, the message is, look, there's life beyond the transaction.
Yep.
If you are here because you want tips on how to get more transactions, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Tons of podcasts about how to get tips on more transactions, and they're wonderful.
Yeah.
I listen to Tom Ferry all the time because I like tips on getting more transactions. That's not this.
Right.
Right. That's the message here. The message here is there's more to this game than more transactions. And if that speaks to you, that's a message that you can hear. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yep.
Yay.
And that each person in the community that has a project would be on the path of finding their message, and not just finding it, but iterating it, mumbling it forward,
Yes. Great.
Today, what do you want to say to the world about agency? Tomorrow, what do you want to say to the world about leadership? There's this, you communicating with the world in service of others,
right,
who have ears to hear it.
Right. This is one of them. And then, my first time home buyer classes are a different message, right? Like you can, in fact, stop paying your landlord's mortgage. That's a different message than this, but both are in service of,
related to agency. If you infuse that into it.
That's right.
If you infuse that into it.
Great. And you keep that alive. Right.
Right.
Okay, good. And either of them, it's good because either of them, all the messages, unless you're consciously, consistently keeping that alive, the ideal, the vision of the future that you're out to create, the true north that you have, unless you're actively doing work to that, they're all going to devolve into, we need more people in this seminar, so we got to assign more people up to the podcast, blah, 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 blah. I need more buyers. It's all going to devolve to the lowest potential energy state.
Yep.
That's entropy. That's a physical law of the universe. Nothing's going to change that unless you pump energy into keeping that alive.
Perfect. Which is why the community exists, is to high tide float the boat. The community is a high tide that keeps it above the gravitational pull of entropy.
Right. Because otherwise, without community, you are really fighting entropy all the time on your own, right? Which is the whole power of community, is that you have a place in which that which you created lives outside of yourself, in the listening of others. That's, Advanced Course 101. That's this community. I just spent a week with a group of strangers, and we have a WhatsApp thread, right? That we're like, just because we're keeping that conversation alive.
Right. Yeah. So good.
Okay, good. So that's the message. Portion of the idea of the opportunity. What's the second?
The second system then in building that legacy or the cathedral would be the right people. So part of what you, the person with the project, is doing is going out into the world and not looking at who has a heartbeat that wants to buy or sell a house, but who are the people, who are my people that are headed where I'm headed, right? Because if people like us do things like this, you're going to build a groundswell of frequency, vibration, compatibility, chemistry, collaboration for the thing you said, the project you're building. If you try to take the project and offer it to people who don't get it, it doesn't go anywhere. You get more entropy.
Right.
But if you find people who get it, like you and your WhatsApp thread, all of a sudden now there's momentum. There's, oh, that's good. And then it builds on itself.
Right. It also has the advantage of slaying my internal dragons.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't have to worry about myself getting discouraged and off track and this isn't going to happen and F this. It's the world of having a coach. It's the world of sharing and enrolling others in what you're up to. It's the world of having partners. Right. I love the, the world of, McCartney, Lennon, Richards Jagger, those, when they got together, they were just like, look, any song that either one of us writes is written by both of us, just because that's how it goes, because we're not going to start nickel and diming each other. It's a collaboration.
Yeah.
Those were the right people together.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And just roll from there. Yeah, good. So that's all the world of the right people.
I want to add something to the people part of it, where it's like if you look out in the business world right now, and we'll use real estate agents in this particular example, there are plenty of networking groups like BNI or any other place you can go to be in proximity to other people, and the conversation that lives in those, I'll use the word community here, that lives in those or networks is a conversation for pasture leads to the middle, and I mean, that's pretty much what that is. We're already used to be surrounding ourselves in proximity with other people, but we're not very intentional about surrounding ourselves or intentionally building a network of the right people who are headed where we're headed.
Yeah, it's something that it's interesting. It's that you said network, because that's something Jeff Wilmore distinguishes as a network of contribution. It's not a transactional network. Yeah. Which is what the BNI network is. Again, we're not in any way demeaning those networks. That's absolutely a useful function. It's just not the only function available.
And when you're talking about building a legacy, one network has a bigger groundswell than the other. One is already oriented to the impact. The other one isn't. Right. One is oriented to transaction. The other is oriented to impact, if you build it that way.
That's right. And that's what the purpose of this community is. Okay, good. So now we've got message and people.
Yep.
Right message, right people.
Yep. The third one would be a process, the right process. Right. So, and again, all this is in the context of a project. So giving you things to go do, the activity to build. So saying the right, like practicing and mumbling the message. That's something you can do actively. Actively finding people who are headed where you're headed. That's something you can do on a daily, weekly basis. The third piece then is the right process. So when you think about people having agency, or I think about leaders leading, but what is your true north? There are certain processes that will accelerate that. And if you can design, the project, if you can design into the project what that is, it will nurture it. So for me, the process for me is community. I'm going to go build 1,000 communities with 1,000 members in each community. It's a process. Community is a process, in my opinion, to nurture leadership, to nurture leaders. If you don't have a thing an activity that the people are going to do, a process that you're putting the people in, then how? So you have the message and you have the people, but what are you and the people doing? What is what's the action?
Good. So just to break it down and give examples, and just what I hear in that is, that for real estate agents, there's more to life than the transaction. That was really the
Yeah.
purpose of this podcast way back when. It's funny, I just Facebook memory came up today of distinguishing leadership, legacy, and leverage.
Nice.
Last year, right?
Wow.
Yeah. But that was the purpose, is that there is more to life for a real estate agent than the transaction. And if that speaks to you, then here's something you can listen to that would, spark ideas and give you a path forward to creating something beyond more transactions. And so there's that. So then this podcast in that world becomes part of that process.
Yeah.
Great. And again, just if we're going to go back to empowering people's agency through moving from renting to owning, right? That's a pathway to agency.
Yeah.
The process there then becomes first-time home, fits in that process of first-time home buyer classes.
Sure.
Working out various rent to own programs, all the various ways that people can make that move become part of the process inside honoring agency.
Yeah.
Right. That's the process. The people are both the actual individuals that are looking to make that move, and the lenders and credit people and all the people that support people, the vendors that's all the right people in that world. And then the message is you actually can start building your equity and don't have to pay someone else's mortgage. Okay, good. So
as long as it doesn't break down, as long as the process doesn't devolve back to, if it's a home buyer workshop or seminars or whatever the thing is, and you're intentionally infusing the true north.
Yeah. It's good, Chris, because everything is, we just said this, everything is going to devolve into transact. Everything's going to devolve into system 2 thinking. It just is. It just is. It's the way we are wired. And it's not wrong that it does. It's not like, well, I guess that fell apart. No, churches fall apart.
Yeah.
Churches do, in fact, fall apart. Everything falls apart. Everything falls apart. You got to constantly maintain your integrity with the idea that you're honoring by having the church in the first place.
Yeah.
And, I love the image of those physical churches, because we've all seen churches that have been abandoned.
Yeah.
Right. That the community, the right people moved. Went away, or the message was no longer relevant to them. And the church, there are people that live in
the process lost its life, like the breath of life, the process became transactional or.
Right. And that's right. So good. All right. That's that.
So those are the three. And the fourth one is the right target. So this is how you start, you're going to create a thing called a marathon. Once upon a time, someone invented something called a marathon, and they're like, we're going to run 26 miles. Like that was created. That was an invented target that people said they were going to do. At some level, for your legacy, it just helps to pick a target so that you can play the game called, I'm going to train to run a marathon. Like if you don't pick a target, then it kind of occurs like, maybe I'll run today, maybe I won't run today, maybe I'll take a walk, maybe I'll just skip some rope. Your actions are very undefined when you don't pick a target. So, the right target goes a long way in helping you design the game or build the cathedral.
Well, I think it's even beyond that. So yes, to build the cathedral, but I think without a target, there is no game.
Yeah, good.
The way I used to talk about it is score is constitutive of a game. If you don't have a score, which is what you're saying is a target, either way, right? You don't have a game. You got playing, you got catch, you can play catch, right? But unless you measure the distance between you two and watch how far you can throw it, or how many times did you throw it without dropping or anything. You don't have a game.
Yeah.
You have to have a score to have a game. And this is where it also gets wonky for people. This is another place where you got to watch for de-evolution.
Yep.
De-evolution, devolution, de-evolution.
De-evolution.
Okay, fine. Where you got to watch for de-evolution, because it's going to turn transactional. It's going to turn into, now the point of the game is the score.
Right.
Almost immediately. That was
Almost
bad.
immediately.
Almost immediately, right? That the score becomes the game. You know,
that's real level one thinking to keep it, to, you know, that way of thinking about 1 million members and 1,000 communities for me is constantly getting reframed as, it only is there to point me for the action. It's not there to judge me that I did or didn't do it. It's only there to inspire the next action. Yeah.
The score is something that throws people off. You know, the way we distinguish that now, there's a great distinction between, hang on, my VA is calling me. Can you see that on your screen?
No.
Okay.
No.
It's coming up on my screen. He's calling me on WhatsApp. There's a difference between measures and results. And those are so often collapsed for people, right? Like we're talking measures, 1,000 people and 1,000 communities. That's a measure. That's not a result.
Correct.
And it's that will devolve into the result is 1,000 people. The result is people that leaders are leading. That's the result. The world is changing is the result for you, not 1,000 people. 1,000 people is a measure for something that you've said gets you closer to the result you want.
Right.
You know, 100 people, first-time home buyers from renting to owning this year is not the result.
Yeah. Right.
That's not a result. I mean, it is a result. It's not the result.
Yeah.
The result is that 100 families' legacy has been, you know, generational legacy has been rewritten.
That's fun. Yeah.
That they and their children and their children's children are on a path to generational wealth that otherwise they would not be.
Yeah.
That's a result. I'm measuring that by 100 families.
Yeah.
Right. But the result is and to keep those two things clear. And and you can then begin to see the holistic nature of everything that we're just talking about here. I like this part. Go around my head where, you know, that's again, community will help with that.
Right.
Community will then start giving you that back. You'll start to hear in other people where they get down the measured hole, and then you'll catch yourself, right? Or, you know, you'll notice that your message needs tweaking because that thing about 100 families changing the course of their generational wealth or whatever. I got to tweak that message because that's a way better message for the result I'm committed to.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Good.
And so then you can begin to get the message needs some tweaking.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
So all four things, you got to start somewhere.
Yep.
And I don't even know that it matters which one of the pillars you start with. You're going to start with one of them and know that you don't have anything to stand on until all four are established.
Right.
You need four.
Yeah.
To get, and then you're going to start to build and create and play off all four of them and see what happens. But then that becomes the way one builds a legacy that matters to them.
Good. Yeah. And I think part of, if I just think about how this actually unfolds or has unfolded for me, then is, you know, you don't have them all at once. You got to start somewhere, but in the community, the function of the community isn't like, okay, it's check-in time. I want you to report on what you did last week for the thing. It's sometimes that's premature because you don't have all 4 things to report on. Like, to me, what makes the community is very rich in as an experience is that it's practicing the level 1 thinking. Like, it's to take a thought in the middle of a series, like we did our first series on the mumble phase and what it is to mumble through things. So the idea that you're in a conversation with others who are headed where you're headed, who are wrestling with the way to think about things, is the work of the community. That you have a project then to go think about, that you have a project where you've practiced how to think.
Yep. And you've got people that are not only thinking themselves in that way,
right?
Like a real high, top graded mastermind. I don't like top graded, but high thinking mastermind to bounce those ideas off of. But these are people that have gone down that road or going down that road with you,
right?
And have, it does make the curation part of the community of the people, the right people,
right,
really important, that you really do have people that you can trust. That there's a set of ground rules and it's interesting, Chris. It's also something I think important for us. This is now maybe not, it's a little too specific for the listeners regarding your project, but maybe not. A series of filtering questions, ground rules, right? I think this is valid for anyone, right? This is, you hear this all the time with people about, when with realtors working with clients they don't like.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, who's the idiot here? You're why are you complaining about your customer? You took them on. You didn't have to take them on. Right. Who's responsible for them being a jerk? But so there's there really is what's important in community, what's important in the people, what are the qualities. That's a prompt, Chris, I think, for when we get to empowering agents in developing building their cathedral. What are the filtering characteristics, questions? What are the filters that they're going to use to determine the right community? I was thinking back on this retreat I just came back from, this training I just came back from, and the way those, that community is, was established so quickly and so profoundly and so deeply, that I was just looking at the qualities of what had that happen. I mean, sort of, everyone was already there. They were committed for a week. It was, small enough that you really didn't have an option to not connect with people, and that the space was created that if anything did come up, like a conflict between anybody, which didn't, but if it did, well, that's not even true. It did. The purpose of the workshop, the training, was very much to get that kind of thing resolved. So, that kind of this is the part that's specific to us in developing the community. I think that's also something that showed up in the first run of it, was setting up the expectations, setting up the ground rules, listening for, are they a fit or not? Willingness to have people not be in it if they're not a fit. What makes them not a fit? It is, I like it because it's not scalable. I enjoy things that are not scalable on some level, right? Like, it's exclusive. You really do need to work in this context. And so, I mean, there's those, but that's an interesting thing. Like, what are the filters that you're going to use to determine they really are people like us? So that they can do the things that we do. Like, what is it that makes them like us? Because it's certainly not, well, I got time and I got money, so I'm like you.
Right.
What are the qualities?
That's good.
So that's an interesting prompt there for that segment of the conversation.
Yeah, love that. I mean, those, to me, those 4 pieces, right message, right people, right process, right target, create a very minimum viable framework for how to begin to think about what your project would be for legacy. Like, how would I take this thing that is my true north and start to build actions around it in my community with people to create a groundswell, to cause ripples, to cause legacy, and I don't have that answer for you, and Aaron doesn't have that answer for you, and you get to define what that is. And my whole thing with communities, we get to walk each other home as we live out our projects, as we live out our legacy.
Yeah.
And when I created my community a year and a half ago, it was because I was craving people who could hang in that conversation with me. I'm like, dude, I would have these great 6-week programs around messaging. We'd all have these really great, deep conversations about it. And then we'd go our separate ways. And I felt alone in what I was out to create in the world. So I'm like, I knew I needed a community model where I could be around people who are actively engaged in the same kind of thing I'm engaged in. Simply because it kept me in the game.
Yeah. Right. I mean, that's what drew me to talk to you for when we was like, oh, Chris is someone that, I trust, I enjoy, and will, is rigorous with me and will hold me to account and help me develop this train of thought in a way that will make a difference for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Get me out of my own way like that. And that's the purpose. That's fabulous. All right, good. Well, I think that's an entire thought. You and I have whatever work we have to do to work out what's the next, what are the entry points to this conversation?
Right.
What are our filters and where do people go? But I think I hope this was a valuable conversation for anyone listening in terms of their developing, their legacy, their conversations for legacy. And, and then we could talk and leverage and leadership. I mean, it's all right in there. So good. I think there's more to say about leverage, a lot more to say about leverage, about this, but I think we should pick that up next time.
Beautiful. Okay. I love it. Well, thanks everybody. If you want to learn more about the community, whenever we relaunch it, you can go to repurpose.group/invite and check it out there. And until next time, Aaron, see ya.